wow, it's been a while since I've done this. Just to show you how big of a phony I am, this mic is not even plugged in. To defend myself, because I was worried about the audio quality, I'm using my AirPod, and we'll see how this goes. Like, the audio is such a pain to sync with the video, and I don't have the energy for that right now. But you know what I do have the energy for? My favorite books that I've read in 2022 so far.
3, 2, 1.
So I'm just gonna talk about my favorite books that I've read so far. The title is pretty self-explanatory, so we'll get into it. I'm gonna go in the chronological order of when I read them. So I just want to say that just because that these are my favorite books that I've read so far, that doesn't mean that these are all 5 stars. It's just that they are the books that I think about a lot or that I really enjoyed this year. I will tell you my rating for each of these books. The first book is my first 5-star read of 2022, and it is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. And if you know me, you know why this is my favorite book. It's second chance romance, friends to lovers. It's so cute. The banter in it is so good. Like, it's so funny. I had my cousin read it, and she was like, wow, this book is not a 5-star read for me. It is, I think she rated it 4 stars. And then she thought about it and she went back and revised her rating. I'm not sure if she gave it a 5, but she did bump it up because she was like, I did really like the banter and I do think about it. So 5-star read. Banter is amazing. Also, if you're wondering why I'm holding the mic if it's not plugged in, I just want to have something in my hand to hold, because 2 free hands, I could never. Yeah, so this book is about the main character Macy and her childhood best friend Elliot, and it just goes through their story. They go from childhood friends to strangers to lovers, which honestly has so many of my favorite tropes in one book, and it's just very nicely written with all the banter, and I really enjoy it. And I literally am saying the same things over and over again. This is a good summer read, and it's a very good fast read, and I'm probably gonna end up rereading this again before the year ends. Maybe next year, who knows, but I will be rereading this because I want to annotate it. First 5-star read. My second 5-star read, I don't have a physical copy, it's on my Kindle. My second 5-star read of 2022 is Reminders of Him. And Reminders of Him is, again, a very good book, but in a different way. It made me cry, made me laugh, hurt my heart just a little bit. Just kidding, it literally ripped my heart. It's about Kenna and Ledger and their story. It's a small town book. It's heartwarming, heartbreaking. I would read the trigger warnings. It's a really good book, would recommend. The next book I want to talk about is Ghosts. I do have a physical copy. I don't have it with me because I am lending it to my cousin. Honestly, when I bought the book, I didn't know much about it. I literally just bought it because I thought the cover was pretty, and like, this would be a good like statement book to have on my bookshelf. I read it, and it really isn't a page turner. I wasn't riveted by the book. I wasn't like, oh, I have to get through these. Like, I feel like for Reminders of Him, I flew through that book because I was like, I want to know what happens. But in terms of Ghosts, I feel like it's kind of like a slice of life book where I'm not enthralled by anything, but it's still like a good story to have. I rated it a 4, but the reason why it's on my favorite books of 2022 is that its depiction of online dating is just crazy accurate, and as someone who is doing that, it's a good, like, it just reminded me like I'm not alone, I'm sane. And I honestly do think about it quite a bit of just like that's what I'm going through, and like I just think about the storyline a lot. So if you've ever gotten ghosted, read the book, or don't. Who needs a book to remind you of the pain that you've gone through? As a compliment to that book. The next book that I really enjoyed this year, I rated this a 4.25, so a little higher than Ghost itself. So if you're gonna read one, maybe just read this one. But it's by the same author, Dolly Alderton, and it's called Everything I Know About Love. This book, I really just enjoy the commentary on love, and it talks about all types of love, not just romantic. It talks about platonic, familial, all of it. Also, I know that I literally am just calling every book on here good. Just let me know if you want an in-depth review of any of these. This book, I feel like it talks a lot about self-love. Although I feel like this book is better for people that are further along in their life, like maybe like late 20s, early 30s. As an early 20 something, I thought I still really enjoyed the book, and it talked a lot about just like growing in your 20s and feeling behind in life and just literally all of it. I really enjoyed it, and I feel like this book complemented with Ghost really pair well together, just because like they talk about the same type of thing. But with that said, if you didn't like Ghosts or you didn't like this, you probably won't like the other book because they're written in a very similar way. For a memoir, this was like pretty easy to get through, and it's not like overly self-helpy. It's very much just like, here's her life story and here's her takeaways from it. And as a 20 something, this was really relevant to me and I really enjoyed it. The next book that I really enjoyed this year was Never Let Me Go, and this book was a surprise for me. Like, I would say that my type of book is typically your romance. Like, you can tell all my books were like romance books so far, and this was more of a stretch book for me. But I rated this a 4.25 because I really enjoyed it, because this book talks a lot just about like society, life, friendships, mortality, what it means to be human. It talks about a lot. And for a relatively small book, it was pretty good. It is a slower story, but it still, I think, like, is a good book. Also, I read it and it left me feeling empty at the end of it. Like, I finished it and I was like, wow, I'm hollow on the inside. And I just sat and put me in like a 5 to 10 minute existential crisis. So if that's exactly what you're looking for, this book is it. I also read Clara and the Sun by the same author, and I think I rated it the same, so 4.25. But I would say that I liked this one a little better. I feel like at some points Clara was a little hard to take in, but this one's like very digestible. But with that said, I also think about Clara and the Sun quite a bit, just like the lessons learned from it. The next one is Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory. If you look through my recommendations from this video, you will see what side of Bookstagram I'm on. These are all books that I see recommended a lot, but there's a reason why they're recommended a lot. I rated it a 5 out of 5 stars. This is my most recent 5. These stories are so weird, but I love them. I didn't love all of them. I loved most of them. I would say I really liked a lot of the beginning and middle stories. Kind of like the ending stories kind of weren't my favorite, but I was like, I'm not gonna rate this book lower than a 5 just because I didn't like some of the stories, because the stories that I liked, I really enjoyed. And I thought that they were funny, they were weird, they were quirky. I know like some people didn't really like the book because it really is kind of out there. Like, there are some stories that you're just like, what? And I did read this end to end, where some people like to read one story, come back to it, read another. Not me. I like this book because it talked a lot about like the messy, ugly, weird parts of love. It was like funny, heartbreaking. It had interesting commentary on society and rituals for love. It talked about, again, like all types of love, platonic, romantic, familial. And one of my favorite stories, it talks about yearning to an extent of, I can totally see this happening to me. Obviously not to the extent that it did in the story. Very common of what happens to me. And if you're wondering which story that is, it is called Misconnection M4W. And like, that story, I read it and I was like, that's literally me. Like, I sit there and I will be like, wow, that person's like really attractive. And then that's it. I look at them and I'm like, I'm mentally calling for you to come over and talk to me, but I'm not actually gonna do anything about it, you know? This book was so beautiful in a very melancholy kind of way. My favorite stories from this are Salted Circus Cashews, Swear to God, Short Stories, Misconnection, Rufus, Move Across the Country, You Want to Know What Plays Are Like, The Average of All Possible Things. And like, going into this, I really didn't think I would like most of the stories in there. What I like about this book also is the fact that he plays with typography. Like, if you can see, like the font gets bigger and smaller, and I just think that use of font size is not something that I see very often, so I really enjoyed that. But this book, full of great little stories, would recommend. And last but not least, for the first half of the year, the last book that I read that I really enjoyed was Cleopatra and Frankenstein. Now, Again, this is one of the books that I bought just because I saw the cover on Instagram and I was like, oh, that's a really pretty cover. Sadly, I do not live in the UK, so this is the cover the US gets. It's still really pretty, but not as pretty, in my opinion, as the UK version. Tell me why I'm considering ordering the UK version just so I could have that cover. I digress. So this book, in a similar vein to Someone Who Will Love You in All Your Damaged Glory, it's beautiful, but it's depressing at the same time. I rated this book a 4.5 out of 5. At the point in my life where I read it, this book is exactly what I wanted. This book is not your typical love story of boy meets girl, they fall in love, and they live happily ever after. You get to read about their trials, the obstacles they face. It's heartbreaking, it's heartwarming. It really shows the brutality of love, and it shows the ups and downs that a couple faces. I loved how all the characters had flaws, and all the characters, even the side characters, had their own story. I feel like in a lot of romance books and a lot of books in general, the side characters aren't very developed, they're not very fleshed out, but this book does that, and I really enjoyed how that was done. And honestly, I really feel like this is like a really nice coming of age story. And if you watched my birthday vlog, which I plan to post before this, so if you haven't watched it, go ahead and watch it. You know that I was reading this and I started this book when I turned 24, and the main character starts at 24. So I was just like, wow, I hope I'm not Cleopatra, or Cleo if you actually read the book. But it was just like kind of funny how we're both the same age, and just like dealing at its core to similar things. So this is the last book that I've read of 2022 that I've really liked. Currently I'm reading A Man Called Uva, and I enjoy that book so far. I don't know if it would make my top books of 2022. It has potential to, but maybe I'll make a whole year roundup. But I am slowing down reading. As I mentioned, if you want more in-depth review of any of these books, feel free to comment which ones below or all of them. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye.